You know that feeling when the weight of the world is just entirely crushing you? Your chest tightens up, your mind is racing a mile a minute, and you can't carry it all. Look, if you're breathing, you've probably been there. Well, in today's Explainer, we're diving into the absolute masterclass on handling that exact kind of intense, overwhelming pressure. We're looking at the historical and theological narrative of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Whether you're approaching this from a faith perspective or just looking at the historical text, this story is a profound, deep dive into what happens when human limits are pushed to the absolute breaking point, and more importantly, how to actually navigate your darkest hours. So, here's our roadmap for this Explainer. We'll start by looking at the reality of stress, walk straight into the garden of pressure, and then track the cascading betrayals and complete abandonment Jesus faced. After that, we'll decode what the bitter cup actually means, and finally, we'll wrap up with some incredibly practical strategies for overcoming pressure in your own life today. Let's get right into it. All right, Section 1, The Reality of Stress, a required course. Our source material drops a major truth bomb right out of the gate. Stress is not an elective in the school of life. It is absolutely a required course. It's the worry, the tension, the pain triggered by all those daily threats and challenges. But here's what's really fascinating. The text points out that pressure actually serves a purpose. It reveals our true inner condition. It shows us exactly what we're made of when all the comfortable, easy circumstances are just stripped away. Even Jesus faced immense, terrifying pressure. And that brings us to this incredible quote that perfectly nails the core problem with stress. Stress doesn't ask for your permission to appear. I mean, it's a total intruder, right? It never waits for a convenient time when you're super well rested and your bank account is full. No, it just bursts through the door totally unannounced. Acknowledging that you can't control when it arrives is really the very first step in managing it. Moving on to Section 2, the Garden of Pressure, the olive press. So the text sets this dramatic scene in a place called Gethsemane. And guys, this isn't just some random geographical footnote. In Aramaic, the word Gethsemane literally translates to olive press. It was a real physical place where heavy stone slabs were used to crush olives until the oil poured out. The source points out the intense symbolism here. Jesus himself was entering the ultimate press. He literally says, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death." He was being crushed under the weight of what was coming. Just look at the artwork from our source materials capturing this very moment. You've got these chaotic, cold, dark blues, purples, and greens pushing in from the sides like a dense, heavy forest of pressure closing in on him. But then, look right in the middle. You see that winding path with those vibrant, almost violent yellows and fiery red lines? That represents the raw energy and sheer agony just bursting out from under that extreme compression. Down in the bottom right, that deep blue circular mass looks exactly like olives being squeezed in the press, which totally mirrors the biblical description of Jesus sweating drops like blood. It is a stunning, vivid visual of absolute agony. Which leads us right into Section 3, Failure and Betrayal, a symbol of love turned weapon. You know, when we're trapped under that olive press, we desperately need our support systems. But let's walk through this painful timeline to see how the tension just skyrockets here. For Jesus, the very people he relied on most start completely failing him. What should have been his greatest comfort turns into his absolute deepest wound. He literally just asks his closest friends to stay awake and pray with him. But hour 1, he comes back, they're sleeping. Hour 2, fast asleep again. Hour 3, a third heartbreaking failure. As the source notes, spiritual weakness so often shows up as spiritual slumber. And then comes the ultimate blow. Minute 180, Judas shows up. And he's not alone. He brings a mob armed with swords and clubs. And how exactly does he identify Jesus in the dark? With a kiss, a universal symbol of love completely weaponized into a tool for betrayal. Yet Jesus doesn't throw punches and he doesn't run away. He simply points out the sheer injustice of it all, asking why they're treating him like some kind of robber. And then he deliberately, willingly surrenders. All right, Section 4. Complete abandonment, standing alone. The absolute second the arrest happens, the bottom completely falls out of Jesus' social support system. The really crucial word here is everyone. Everyone deserted him and fled. The source material makes a huge point to emphasize that even the absolute bravest, most committed followers ran for their lives. The panic was so wildly intense that one young guy, when the crowd grabbed him, literally slipped out of his clothes and ran away stark naked into the night. I mean, that is sheer terror. When Jesus needed human presence the most, he stood entirely, completely alone. Our explainer source draws a really powerful modern parallel to this. Sometimes taking a stand for the truth or making the right, principled choice is going to profoundly isolate you. It might cost you relationships, your comfort, maybe even people's approval. But the deep comfort here is knowing that Jesus has already walked that incredibly lonely road. You aren't blazing a new trail. Now let's look at Section 5, the bitter cup, beyond physical pain. Throughout this whole agonizing ordeal in Gethsemane, Jesus repeatedly prays for this cup to be taken away from him. But what is the cup? Well, as we define it here, the cup represents something way beyond just the natural human fear of a brutal physical execution. According to the source, this cup is the full, concentrated weight of divine wrath against sin. It meant absorbing the entire world's guilt, enduring ultimate judgment, and, most agonizingly of all, experiencing complete and total separation from God the Father. That was the real, crushing weight inside the olive press. The massive theological takeaway here, what you could call the gospel in Gethsemane, is that Jesus made the deliberate, excruciating choice to drink that cup entirely. He drank it right down to the dregs, specifically so that humanity wouldn't ever have to.
Finally, Section 6, overcoming the pressure. Strategies for today.
So let's pivot to how this text actually instructs us to handle our own modern-day Gethsemane moments. The source breaks down some incredibly practical steps. Listen, the number one biggest mistake people make when they are under severe stress is isolating themselves. When the pressure hits, our immediate human instinct is to pull away, to hole up, and hide in the dark, right? But the text explicitly calls us out on this. Drawing straight from Galatians 6:2, the clear mandate is to bear one another's burdens. Two are always better than one. The source argues pretty convincingly that when you are being crushed, you literally cannot survive the olive press alone. You're instructed to actively invite trusted, supportive people right into the garden with you.
What's super fascinating about this comparison is how perfectly it captures human psychology. Just think about what stress naturally does to you. It completely distorts your vision. Under pressure, your problems suddenly look massively inflated. It's like you develop instant amnesia about every good thing that's ever happened to you, and your brain just hyper-focuses on the absolute worst-case scenarios. Sound familiar? Well, the text calls us to actively hit the refocus button. You have to stop obsessing over the size of the problem and intentionally start focusing on the greatness of God. Stop making a list of everything you lack and start cataloging what you actually have. We have to shift our eyes away from potential disasters and firmly anchor them on past faithfulness. Honestly, doing this requires a complete redefinition of what we're even aiming for. We usually think peace means just getting rid of the stress entirely, right? Like somehow canceling that required course. But the source defines peace completely differently. Peace is not the absence of pressure. It's the presence of God right in the middle of the chaos. Even if your external circumstances don't change one bit, you aren't alone. True peace comes from deep trust, not from having absolute micromanaged control over your environment. So, to pull this all together, here's your definitive toolkit for the olive press moments of your life, pulled straight from the source. 1. Fill your mind with actual truth, not catastrophic fiction. 2. When panic strikes, instantly replace it with prayer. 3. Stay spiritually awake. Don't just numb out and fall asleep at the wheel like the disciples did. 4. Let other people carry the weight with you. 5. Actively manage your focus. And finally, choose to actually walk in that redefined peace. I really want to end by reading a powerful portion of the closing prayer from our source material. It goes, Father God, thank you for being our refuge. Replace anxiety with your peace, replace fear with faith, and strengthen them in every trial. Remind us that you are with us and we are not crushed. The pressure in life? Yeah, that's guaranteed, but being crushed by it? That is absolutely not. So I'm going to leave you with this question to chew on today. When your personal Gethsemane moment comes and that press really begins to tighten, who or what is going to be your unshakable refuge? Think about it. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.